Welcome to the week 2 go-to session. So this is a second session out of 4 that we're holding for this month. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to dive right into it. This week's quiz questions all appear at the end of the session. So last week they were sort of showing up sporadically throughout the session. Today they're all showing up at the end, just so you're aware of that. Okay, so mostly this week we're going to talk about, but a good portion of this session will be devoted to research and what's called APA format, because the work that you need to hand in for this class and throughout the rest of your time in Full Sail will typically be in APA format. So I think this is the first class that you take where you learn it somewhat in depth. So I will spend a lot of time talking about research in APA, but I will make some comments about the essay as well. Okay. Oh, before we get rolling, keep up with your McGraw-Hill work. I was happy to see that most people were on top of that. Again, they're really, really easy points, so why not take advantage of them? So I was happy to see lots of people at 100% for the week 1 Learn Smart Achieve module. So keep up with that. Some people I've noticed have already steamrolled right ahead, and they're working on week 2, week 3, even the month-long one. That's fine. I have it set up so that you can work ahead if you want to, but please stay on top of that. Okay, so let's look at what we're going to cover tonight. Here's what we're going to go over. Actually, I should have bumped this first thing down. We'll take a look at the actual assignment sheet for the essay later in the session. But I do want to talk about research and APA, and then we'll get to issues of the essay. Okay, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. I'm going to move right ahead because we do have a lot to cover. Oh, and by the way, if you have like Microsoft Word, you might want to open it and just open a blank document, because I'm going to walk you through the steps of setting up your paper in APA format in terms of like margins, paragraphing, all that fun stuff. So if you follow along, or if you want to follow along in real time, you can do so, and then you've sort of got that down so you can just hit the ground running when it comes time to write your actual paper. We'll do that in a little bit. But first, let me make some kind of general comments about research. Oh, some quick reminders before you begin. All of you should have read my feedback now to your week 1 go-to quiz. Most importantly, where you proposed a topic. So if you haven't already, you need to refine your topic. Some of you, I approved your topic already. Some of you, I made some minor suggestions. But if you do need some work in terms of refining your topic, please do so, because this topic becomes the foundation of what you're working with all month. Okay, so your essay is on that topic, and we haven't talked about it yet. We'll get into this next week, but eventually you're going to create an actual multimedia public service announcement in the form of a video, an audio piece, a song, a comic. And that will be with you using your topic that you've chosen way back in week 1. Okay, so we need to get those topics on track if they're not already. Okay, so let's talk about research. Research is important because it's a requirement for this assignment. You need to have at least one source, one credible source that comes from the Full Sail library databases, and I'm going to show the databases in just a second. You don't have to stop with one. One is the minimum. I actually encourage that there should probably be more than one source. Those can additionally come from the Full Sail library databases, or it can come from credible sources online. Okay, so keep that in mind. So there needs to be at least one piece of research. But research is more about than just finding a single source because the assignment asks for it. So I like to think of it in terms of research means joining a discussion or joining a conversation, if you will. Either of those terms work well, a discussion or a conversation. And by that I mean, imagine that you're attending like a dinner party, okay? Not a keg party, not a crazy party, like a somewhat, a family get together, a mature gathering of friends. Chances are, let's say there's a pocket of people having a discussion, you're probably not going to jump right into the discussion. You'll probably hang out at the edges, eavesdrop a bit, right? You're going to listen, and then when you feel that you're ready, you're going to participate. So research kind of functions the same way. It's just in place of actual people speaking, you're sort of eavesdropping on the conversation by doing research. In other words, you're going to take a look at what other people have already said about your topic. Because chances are, no matter what your topic is, other people have already spoken on this. You're probably not the first person to have addressed your chosen topic. So why not sort of hang back a bit, listen, find out what other people have said, and then when you're ready, you'll speak, right? You'll join the conversation. In this case, joining the conversation is occurring on the page in the form of your essay that's due on Sunday. So that's why I like to think of research as being the equivalent of joining a discussion or a conversation. The reason I stress this is because, listen, I was young once, okay? I was in college. I know that sometimes there are assignments that you have to complete that require research, and in your mind you think, oh, research, that just means I have to find a quick statistic to throw in my paper, or I just need to find a quotation and drop it in somewhere. But that's not research, okay? That's sort of doing the minimum amount of effort required in order to meet the basic assignment guidelines. Research is much, much bigger than that. I realize that people have busy lives. Many of our students here have full-time jobs. They have families. They have children. I understand that you're crunched for time, and it's difficult to devote every waking hour to research. But it should be more than just running to find a quick stat or a quick quotation to drop in your paper. Research really means sort of hanging back, doing that initial eavesdropping, so that when you're ready to talk on the page in the form of an essay, you're ready to do so, and you're sort of armed to do so. So keep that in mind, okay? That's how research ideally functions, and that's what I'm sort of stressing for this assignment. Okay, so part of dealing with research means how do we handle it? Like, what do we do with it? How does it function? How does it need to be incorporated into the paper? It even includes nitpicky things like how does it have to be formatted, which gets us into APA. First of all, you can just use the chat to answer. Has anybody here worked with APA before? Anyone? If you've taken an English class in high school, or maybe you took a previous college level class, you might be more familiar with MLA. Okay, Pasha says yes. Michael says yes. Okay, so some people have a passing familiarity with it. The good news is that APA and MLA, I mean, they're similar in the sense that they're both accomplishing the exact same things, right? There are rules for when you quote something or when you use a statistic directly in your paper, you need to cite it in the text itself right then and there. It also means that at the end of your paper, you'll have a list of the sources that you used. And the general principles are exactly the same. The difference is just all the nitpicky rules are a bit different. So handling something in APA is much different than MLA. So here's going to be a sort of quick introduction to APA, sort of what you need to know, and I'll point you to some other resources that you already have available to you to learn more and make sure that your work is as perfect as possible. Okay, so that's why I have this picture here, right? We're talking about style, APA style. This woman has a lot of style, a lot of fashion sense, but that's not the kind of style we're talking about. We're talking about APA style. APA basically covers sort of three broad areas. First, just layout and format stuff. So paragraphing, font size, page numbers, a header. But it also includes what I just mentioned. In-text citations, so the stuff that actually appears within the body of your essay. That needs to be cited, and then that list of sources that appears at the very end of your document, which in MLA is called a works cited page, but in APA it's called the references page. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is, if you have your Microsoft Word document open, we're going to walk through this first step, layout and format, together as a class. And if you don't do it now, you can always watch this part of the video after the fact. To get these steps down. But if you follow along, it'll be pretty easy. And I'm going to go ahead and type in a web address into the chat. It's called projectapa.info. This is one of the sources you can use, and I'm going to show it in just a second. So if you have a Microsoft Word blank document open, that's great. So sometimes I get questions like, what if I don't have Microsoft Word? As a Full Sail student, you should have received an email that links to like a free download, so you can just download Microsoft Word and install it. You're free to use things like Google Docs, which has a sort of generic word processor that has pretty much all the same functions as Microsoft Word. It's just that things might be in a slightly different location. You can use Pages if you already have your Mac laptop. Some of you probably have it, some of you don't. Also, Microsoft OneDrive, if you go ahead and Google that, Microsoft has its own version of like free to use software. So even if you don't have Microsoft Word, you can use Microsoft OneDrive online to create documents. But I'm going to go ahead and just open up a blank document. Okay, so I'm going to open up my copy of Word. Keep in mind that this is the Mac version of Word. So if you're using the PC version, maybe things are in slightly different places. So you'll have to figure out where to find it. But I think most of the stuff is pretty much the same. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create our header. It's real simple. Just in the top inch or two of the page. Oh, actually, let me go backwards a step. If we click on the Layout tab, okay, we need to set all of our margins, top, bottom, left, and right, to 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you may not notice, but it's already making changes as I enter in these numbers. Okay, so it's real easy. Okay, so my margins are all set to 1. Now, if I just double click near the top of the page, it gets me into the header. And what we need to put here is, and by the way, here's project apa.info. This was made by a fellow faculty member, and this is really nice because it mostly focuses on the stuff that a typical student would need. So it concentrates more on the more frequent examples that you'll encounter rather than the highly nitpicky stuff. But you also have an example of what an APA formatted paper looks like, and it will repeat a lot of the things that I'm going over right now. Okay, like that. Set 1-inch margins for all 4 sides, right? You're going to use 12-point font, not 16, not 18, not some gigantic font that's designed to fill up space. And if we scroll down, we actually get an example of what a properly formatted paper looks like. And this is also great because even I sometimes forget the rules about APA. Can people not hear me? Okay, am I breaking up right now as I'm speaking? Or am I coming through clear? Okay, now it's better. Sometimes this happens when I'm scrolling, so I'm going to try to remember not to scroll and speak at the same time. But I'm coming through clear now, like when I'm not scrolling up and down the web page. Okay, then I'll try to keep that in mind. The great thing about Project APA Info is that even sometimes I need reminders of what things need to look like. So the first thing we need to type is the words running ahead, okay, in lowercase, except for the initial capitalization of the word running. And then we put the title of our essay in all caps. So I'm going to go to my Microsoft Word document and do that. Okay, running head. And I'm just going to make up a title. Okay, I'm just going to call it placeholder title for English class. Actually, I'm going to put placeholder title English class, and there's a reason why I'm making it 4 words long instead of 3. We also have to insert page numbers. So if we go to document elements, you can also go to the menu up here and do insert page numbers. Actually, I'll do it that way, the old-fashioned way, so you can see. In my version of Mac, it's already set up. Like it's right where I want it in the top right corner. So I'm just going to click on OK. And there we go. We got our header. Right? So we can close this. And the next thing we need to do is set up our title page. We're working on the cover page right now. So I'm going to hit return a bunch of the times to get to approximately the center of the page. I can fix it if it's not looking quite centered. And we need to put 3 things, okay? So again, I'm going to look at my example. Scroll. Okay, so we need title, name, university. So I'm going to go back to my document. Placeholder, title, English class. By the way, you'll have a much better title. My name. The university I'm associated with. Full Sail University. Okay, now that looks terrible, right? So we need to do a couple things. I'm going to go back to the Home tab. I'm going to center this text. I'm also going to double space it, which in the Microsoft Word version for Mac is this little up and down arrow thingy here. So I'm going to change it from 1.0 to 2.0. And you can just do this visually. So if I make this smaller for a second, look at that. It looks almost pretty much centered. I'm going to bump it down one more line. But okay, there we go. There's our title page. See? Easy, or as my children like to say, easy peasy. Okay, next we're going to keep hitting return until we get to the very first line of the second page, and then we're going to stop. Okay, so there, I'm on the first line. The first possible line. We're going to write our title again. Again, you'll have a much more appropriate title or interesting title. Hit enter. And we can start typing our actual essay. Okay, so I'm going to bump things over so we're not centered in the middle of the page. I hit tab because I need to indent the first line of a paragraph, and I can start typing away, right? And you'll notice if you have everything set up in advance, okay, everything's double spaced, everything's properly formatted. The text just automatically wraps around. Every so often I see people who aren't quite comfortable with word processing, so if they don't actually format it to be double spaced, they keep just bumping the line to be double spaced, kind of like you would do in the old days with a typewriter. When you get near the end of the line, you would return, and that causes lots of formatting problems. So make sure that you have all this stuff set up in advance. And when we get to the end of a paragraph, like let's say this is the end of my paragraph, if we need to start a new paragraph, we hit enter once, indent, and just keep going. Okay? We don't hit enter twice. We don't hit enter like 10 times. I had another student explain this to me. Maybe he or she was right, but some students think it's odd when the text of a new paragraph begins right after the words of a previous paragraph. But actually, that's how it should be. Okay? It actually looks incredibly awkward to sort of English instructors to see the opposite, to see too much space between paragraphs. Because if you look at a book, pick up a Harry Potter book, pick up a novel, pick up a textbook, right? You don't have extra spaces between paragraphs. Note too that like the title, right? It's not bolded, it's not underlined, it's not in all caps, it's not in a different font size than the rest of the document. Okay, so a big part of APA is consistency, that we're using one single appropriately sized font for the entire document. That's from the header to the cover page to the text of the essay all the way down to the references page. So resist the impulse to sort of make it fancy or make it look nice or make elements stand out. That's not APA format. Okay, let's pretend that we're at the end of the paper. Okay, so this isn't page 2, this is page 4, page 5, or something like that. When your essay is over, you'll hit return again until you get to the very first line of a new page. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Boom, there we go, very first line. I am again going to center the word references. Okay, just references, not references page, not references the word bolded or underlined or in all caps, just real simply and elegantly the word references. And this is where I'm going to put my list of sources, which we're going to come back to in just a second because I want to show you now the library research databases, and I'll show you some tips and tricks for how you can sort of make some shortcuts in terms of helping you put sources on the references page correctly. But we're going to call a timeout on this first step, which is, oops, I was scrolling and talking at the same time. But you've got the margins down, you've got the running header, you've got the cover page, you've learned the basics of paragraphing. So it's really, really easy. And if you set this up in advance, you don't have to worry about any of this. If you followed along with me now, you can just start typing away the text of your essay when it comes time to write it. Okay, so where do we go to find research? Well, we go to Full Sail Connect. Everybody knows how to get to Full Sail Connect, right? I don't have to teach that. I'm on the main page. You can browse for the library, but it's also here on the left if you scroll down. Okay, so there it is, library. You should kind of remember this from DGL because you had some assignments where you had to go into the library database already. And we'll click on Research Databases. You have a whole slew of different resources you can use, and I encourage you to check through as many as you want. There are ones devoted to business. Okay, business source complete. Film and television index. Okay, LexisNexis. If you're a gaming person, I'm going silent because I don't want to talk and scroll at the same time. You have this site here, Game Sutra, because it's listed here as one of the databases. I count it as one, even though it's technically a separate website. So this is a site devoted to video gaming. But most of you will probably begin with the very first option, which is EBSCOhost. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on there. You can either click on EBSCOhost, which will search all databases at once, or you can start with Academic Search Complete, which is a bit more focused. Try either one. I'm going to try Academic Search Complete. It tends to be pretty comprehensive. Okay, so I'm in. You have 3 search fields that you can use. And I'm going to go ahead and use my sample topic that I've already posted to the discussion board. Remember, we looked at it last week about representations of women in video games. So let's see what I can do here. I'll start off with video games, women, and maybe images, or I could try representation. Let's see what happens first with this one. I'll click search. Okay, so here are my results, right? And some things are going to be on topic, some aren't. Like this first one doesn't seem very helpful. I don't even understand what that means. Gender disparity in video game usage. That might be interesting to look at, even though it's not 100% on topic. By the way, I mean, ideally you should find something that's like perfectly on topic, but don't rule out things that seem like they may not be 100% on topic, but there might be something useful there, something that you could quote or something that you could cite. Okay, I'm actually not getting good results for that. Let's try representation. And by the way, this is what you'll need to do as well. You'll need to play around with different search terms to get the database to yield decent results. Okay, here's one about box art representation in female characters. That might be interesting. Sadly, oh, by the way, this is an important thing too. In order for an article or a source to be truly available, it needs to have either a PDF or HTML link here. So sadly, this one isn't truly available. There's an abstract, which is like a summary of the article, but the actual article isn't available. So this one would have been interesting, box art representation. It's not literally about representations of women in video games, but there could be some interesting stuff here. But this one looks interesting. Big breasts and bad guys, depictions of gender and race in video games. Okay, that sounds interesting. It's from 2008, so it's a little bit old. I would like to find stuff that's more current, but it's not so old that that it couldn't still contain some useful information. So if I click on the PDF document, up comes the article. And then I can read through it. I can decide for myself if it's useful or if it's not so useful, and then go back and continue my searching if need be. But one little trick I want to show you here is once you do find an article that you like in the Full Sail databases, remember you have to find at least one, is you have this little tool here to the right. Okay, looks like a little yellow piece of paper. This is the Citation Tool, and if you click on it, it gives you all the different reference styles. So there's MLA, and look, there's APA. Let me make this a little bit bigger. It has some flaws in it. This is why I'm going to, in just a second, point to other resources you can use. But it is important that you do understand the rules of APA so you can fix the mistakes that the Citation Generator, that's what I'm using right now, makes. It loves to put authors' names in all caps. It's not doing that here. Sometimes it loves to put article titles in all caps. In this case, it's not doing that, but there's still a flaw, which is, and I want to make this really, really clear because so many people missed this part during the session. APA rules for capitalization of article titles on the references page, they follow the same rules as normal sentences. So actually the capitalization that's going on here in the title is absolutely appropriate for MLA, right? We're just capitalizing the first letter of keywords, but not small words like and of. But in APA, unless someone's proper noun appears in the middle of the sentence, only the first letter of the first word gets capitalized, or the first letter of the first word after a colon. But otherwise, it's all this stuff gets lowercase. So I need to fix that. But I can still take the citation because it looks correct. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that. And I'm going to take it back to my document. Right? The references page. Let me scroll and not talk. I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it matches the font style of the rest of the paper. This is what I see often too. You can already tell that this font is not matching the font that I'd been using previously. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that by saying match destination formatting. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way and just make sure that it's the same. Now we need to fix all that stuff, okay? So capitalization we need to fix. Okay. Boom. 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 Okay. Also, every source you list on your references page, it follows opposite rules for indentation. So if we look at a regular paragraph from the essay, right, we indent the first line, but all other lines are not indented. For your sources on the references page, it's the complete opposite. We do not indent the first line, but we do indent all other lines. Okay, so we're going to fix that right now. Boom. Okay, there's my APA citation. Pretty simple, right? I can sort of copy and paste what I already used, what I found in the library databases, and just carry it over and fix whatever small errors that the citation generator has made. Now, it's still important to know how APA functions because if, for example, you find a source online, you can find additional sources online, by the way. You'll need to know how to cite that the right way without a citation generator. But for stuff that's found through the Full Sail Library database, you can kind of use that trick. Just keep in mind you need to fix the small errors. And in order to be able to do that, you need to know what those errors are. And you'll get that from the McGraw-Hill readings for this week. You have a lot of readings on APA, including how to properly format and cite on the references page. And I'm going to point to a couple other things in just a second. I just showed you Project APA Info. That covers the same information as well. But certainly, if you can spot the errors and just carry over a reference like I did here, do so. And I'm going to try something real quick, which is I'm going to go back to the main page here. Michael asks, can we get a link to a grammar checker? If you're using Microsoft Word, it will have a grammar and spell check included. I'm not sure off the top of my head if there's like an online grammar checker that I like. Maybe some other people in the room know about one that's really, really solid. Okay, let me do a quick search because we have a number of people who are, I think, dealing with streaming music, and that's an easy topic as well. So I'm going to put streaming music, royalties, because that's what a lot of people are dealing with, right? The royalty rates that are paid out by streaming music companies. Some people argue that they're criminally low. So let me do a quick search for this. I'm looking for something very, very specific. Okay, why music should not be free. Let me see what happens with this one. Because what I want to show is this one had, let me make this even bigger. Okay, this one has what's called a DOI number. DOI stands for, I think, Digital Object Identifier. Basically, if there's a DOI number listed for the source that you found on the Full Sail Library databases, boom, you have everything that I need, okay? Because I can just take this number, put it into my browser, and go directly to your article. But sometimes you won't have a DOI number, and I want to show what you do when that happens. Okay, so... okay, we found an article. Let's see what this guy looks like. Okay, great. Here's the APA reference for this article. Notice again, we have to fix this because that's not right. That's not APA style for formatting, capitalizing article titles. But there's no DOI number, so we need to put a link that works. First, I'm going to carry this over. Okay. And by the way, these get put in alphabetical order. This guy's name starts with L, so it logically goes after Dickerman. Okay, I'm going to make sure that the formatting matches the rest of the text. And all I need to do here is put the words retrieved from. And if I go back to the article in the database, to the right here, you have this little chain link looking symbol called a permalink. That's what I need. Okay, so if it doesn't have that fancy DOI number, I need that permalink. Michael's saying, do we have to copy and paste the whole article? No, 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 no. You wouldn't copy and paste the whole article at all. This is just how to reference it at the end of your document. And in just a second, I'm going to get into a little bit about quotation and stuff like that. You should only be choosing isolated short quotations or quick facts or quick statistics. I mean, it's difficult to give a ballpark figure, but estimate that like 80% of your essay should be you, and 15% or so might be, quotations and relevant research that you've included. But actually, that's a good question, because some people make that error, and I'm not saying Michael was suggesting this, but some people take huge chunks from what they've researched and just put it in the paper. And they're not trying to be like malicious, they're not trying to cut corners, they're not trying to cheat. It's just that they don't realize that the opposite is true. Okay. Anyway, I was talking about the permalink, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this permalink, and I'm going to bring that over to my document. I'm going to fix the indentation things. Okay, and boom, there we go. Okay, so that's what a references page should sort of look like. Now, if you go online to find information, let me give a quick example of that. Let's do a Google search for gender representations, video games. Actually, look, there's a Wikipedia entry for that. By the way, you all know that Wikipedia is not a trusted source, but does Wikipedia have any role to play? Like, can we use it for something valuable? Is there anything we can get from it? Or just we should always stay away from it and never look at it, and it's terrible? Alike says yes, with a question mark. Anybody else? Eric says general ideas. Okay, there's something there. There is one thing. Yeah, Jacob nailed it. You can kind of tell. I mean, you still have to be cynical and doubtful, but you can sometimes kind of tell which Wikipedia entries are better written than others. In this case, the entry is pretty well written. I would never actually quote anything from the main text of this Wikipedia entry. But yeah, if I could go down to the references at the bottom, there might be useful stuff there. In this case, you can see there's like over 40 different sources. So yeah, I might look through here and see if there's something interesting. Still a Man's Game, gender representation and reviews of video games. Okay, that's not 100% on topic, but maybe there's something interesting there. Gender differences in video game characters' roles, appearances, and blah, blah, blah. That sounds interesting, right? So if you find stuff that's useful, go ahead and use Wikipedia in that way. I think it's a great place to sort of help you find useful stuff. It's just not useful in and of itself. Let me go back to my Google search, though, and see if anything interesting came up. Okay, there's good stuff here. Gender representation in computer video games, an examination of violence and gender role portrayals, women in gaming, women make up half of all gamers. Okay, that's actually kind of interesting, because probably I might want to make that point in my essay, that, hey, women make up a larger percentage of gamers than people think, so maybe game publishers should be more responsible about how women appear in games. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's also from Slate, which is a pretty trustworthy source. I mean, people will pick on it, it's politically too liberal, or you might find a source that's politically conservative or something, that has a certain angle. But, use your DGL skills. USA Today, CNN, New York Times, The Washington Post, Slate, all these are essentially more or less trustworthy sources, because there are levels of editorship. Things just don't get posted online the way that a person would in a blog, for instance. So let's say that I love this article, okay? I would have to read it to make sure. But then I could just adapt this for my references page, right? We have everything we need. We have an author's name. We have a year, 2013. We have a title, and I can just start carrying this stuff over again, right? So let me see if I can do this real quick, because I don't want to bore people. Last name, first initial, year of publication in parentheses. Then comes the title. So I'm going to go and grab that title. I'm going to make sure it's the same font style as everything else. I have to fix all this stuff. But let's say I went ahead and fixed it, okay? I'm not going to change every letter right now. In this case, the publication name is Slate, which just changed to Slate, or you can put slate.com. Doesn't matter. Either one works well for me. And finally, we'll put that retrieve from thing, okay? Retrieved from. And here we don't have a permalink or a DOI number, so we'll just grab. For online stuff that comes from the internet, we just need the URL. So I'm going to take that and put that over. Okay, and then I'm going to fix all those indentation issues. So, okay, we're going to move forward because I'm sure people are starting to get bored watching me create reference after reference. But that's the gist of it. And let me quickly show. I'm going to close some windows because my machine is running hot. Okay, I've already mentioned projectapa.info. You can find everything from a sample of what a properly formatted paper looks like. You can get information on in-text citations, how to handle them, the references page, how those sources should appear, even though I just went over it. You also have this awesome tool that's uploaded as an asset for you. If you go into the actual appeal for action essay assignment, okay, you have a bunch of things. The assignment sheet itself, so make sure that you read through that. I try to cover as much as I can during the sessions, but always look at the assignment sheets because there's a frequently asked questions page. There's the grading rubric so you can see how you're going to be evaluated. I hope I'm still not breaking up. David says that I am. I think it's just I have too many things running on the machine. So as much as I love this document that I just created, I'm going to close it to see if that helps improve things. You know what? For once, I'm actually going to save this thing. Am I still not coming through clearly? Can people hear me okay? Better? Okay, yeah, I think it's just that with scrolling and too many things open, I do apologize. It happens from time to time. But as I was saying, we have all these different materials, so make sure you read through the assignment sheet. Okay, you have an actual example of a student paper, so you can look at that as well. But what's really useful is here, this APA Basics PowerPoint, and I'm going to risk opening this. Hopefully it doesn't make my voice cut out. Okay, so this PowerPoint presentation, which was, it's really useful. It's like 50 slides long. And I'm telling you, if you take the 30 minutes or so to go through this presentation, because that's all it will take you, 20 to 30 minutes, you will be so familiar with APA format that you'll be able to spot issues that the citation generator makes that needs to be fixed. You'll understand the principles of APA. So please go through this whole thing, because it's going to cover some of the information I'm going to go through in just a second. Right, you get some background on APA. But it handles like what an in-text citation looks like. Right, it's basically composed of an author's last name, year, and page number. But it also covers things like, what do you do if there's no author? Well, we just use the first 3 words of the article title and put them in quotation marks. What if there's no date? We just use the abbreviation ND. Okay, so if you go through this presentation carefully, and again, it will only take you maybe 20 to 30 minutes, you'll be APA experts. And I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm not trying to create shortcuts. It's just that I'm going to cover some of these basic principles right now, but there's not enough time in this session to cover every single issue that APA covers. But if you look at Project APA Info, if you look at this PowerPoint presentation that's uploaded as an asset for you, if you remember the things I just showed you in this session, you'll be fine. Okay, because you do get 30 points, I think, awarded as part of your essay grade for handling of APA and research. So why not take most of those easy points? Okay, so back to our original presentation. Thanks for hanging in there with me. This is the roughest session to deliver because it's not the most fascinating stuff, margins and paragraphing and sources, but I do think it's useful. Okay, so in-text citations, here's the gist of it. Any quotation, fact, or information that comes from research needs to be cited, and it needs to be cited right there and then as soon as it appears in your essay. Okay, so we're talking about in your essay, in your actual paragraphs. We're not talking about that end of the paper references page. So, for example, there are a couple different ways to handle it. The first is you can find a way to mention the author's name in the way that your sentence starts out. So let's imagine that the author's name is Smith. So we can begin our sentence according to Smith, and as soon as we mention the author's last name, we put the year of publication in parentheses, okay? So according to Smith, 2008, then we insert our quotation, and then after the quotation in parentheses, we put a page or sometimes a paragraph number. By the way, anybody have an educated guess why it could be a paragraph number instead of a page number? Because it's not really either or. You don't just flip a coin and decide, well, I feel like using the page number. I feel like using a paragraph number. When are some instances where we might need a paragraph number? Any thoughts? Any ideas? Well, I take a sip from my Diet Coke. Okay, I'm getting silence, so I'm guessing that. Okay, Pasha says, depending where you get the info from. Okay, that's on the right path. I'll go ahead and answer it. I don't know if people are typing in their own responses, but think of the Slate article that I just brought up. Let's say I like that article a lot, right? Written by someone named Amanda Hess. That doesn't really have page numbers. I mean, it kind of does. I saw at the bottom that you can click, you can continue ahead onto page 2, page 3. But sometimes there are documents that it's just all on one page. And to help the reader figure out where that information comes from, we give a paragraph number instead of a page number. So basically, we're using paragraph numbers when the document doesn't contain page numbers. Typically, whatever you find through the Full Sail Library database probably has a page number. Okay, because it probably originally appeared in a journal, a magazine, a newspaper, what have you. Lots of stuff that you'll find online, like you find something from, I don't know, CNN or USA Today or Slate or the Huffington Post, those might not have official page numbers. So that's why we put a page or a paragraph number. Okay, so back on track. The first option is we find just a way to mention the author's name and year of publication in our actual sentence, and then deliver our quotation. Or you can just save everything for the end. You can write your sentence however you want. For example, a recent study states, and then I insert my quotation, and then I save everything for the end in parentheses. Author's last name, comma, year of publication, comma, page or paragraph number. And if you could just keep that in mind, that you basically have two options. It seems confusing, but it's not. You can either mention the author's name and year early and save page, paragraph number for the end, or you can just save everything for the end. Okay? And this is for dealing with quotations, but the same exact rules apply, even if you're not directly quoting something. Maybe you're dropping in a fact or statistic, or maybe you've worded things in your own words entirely, so that there's no similarity to the original, but that information comes from research. Just because you've worded it your own way doesn't mean that you don't have to cite it. And that's what I model here. And the same rules. We can put author's last name, year early on in the sentence, or we can save everything for the end. Okay, so according to Smith 2008, American students are underperforming in comparison to their world peers. Let's say that's entirely my own language, but I got that information from research, so I still need to cite it. And we follow the same rules that we're discussing up here for handling quotations. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. This is what I wanted to cover. Some real things to be careful of. First of all, do not photobomb your quotations, your facts, your statistics. Basically, anything comes from research. Photobomb is just my sort of funny way of describing what it feels like when quotations just appear out of nowhere, when they're not set up. And I'm not even just talking about. Okay, let me go back to the last slide for a second. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. Oh, now my PowerPoint presentation is running slow. Okay, so in a way, yeah, technically, like let's imagine there's a quotation here. It is set up in the sense that we're leading into the quotation, but I'm talking about even in the bigger picture, like the quotation should fit naturally within the overall paragraph. Quotations shouldn't just appear out of nowhere, even if they're sort of properly set up this way, right? That it's just as your own sentences should hopefully be logically speaking to the sentences that come before and after. Whatever quotation, fact, or statistic you use also should naturally occur within the body of a certain paragraph. And when a quotation isn't properly set up, when it just appears to come out of the blue, I compare that to photobombing, because we all know what photobombing is, right? That's when someone either intentionally or unintentionally, like surprises, shows up in a photo that wasn't they weren't intended to appear in. So that's what it feels like when a quotation just appears out of nowhere. As the reader, I'm following along, I'm doing great. It's like, okay, good, 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 and then boom, out of nowhere, information suddenly appears. So we have to sort of set things up. And by the way, that sample student paper that you have as one of your assets, take a look at that, because that student does a pretty good job of making sure that his quotations, his research always sort of fits naturally within his overall discussion. And yeah, there's something called the sandwich technique. So we set up the quotation, which is like one piece of bread. We deliver the quotation, which is like the meat, or if you're a vegetarian, it's like the veggies or the cheese. And then we follow the quotation with our own commentary, which is like the other piece of bread. If you're following those general principles, that you're naturally kind of setting up what's about to come from research and then delivering that research and then commenting after it, you're probably avoiding photobombing. Second, and this kind of speaks to Michael's earlier question, avoid long quotations that speak entirely for you. Remember, occasional use of research should help to support your points, not the other way around. Plus, any quotation that's over 40 words actually needs to be set up in a special format called block format. It's not difficult. You have examples of how to do that in the PowerPoint presentation. That's an asset on project.apa.info. But for the most part, you probably shouldn't be using quotations that long. As I said earlier, I do see this occasionally. And it's not out of maliciousness. It's just a student comes across a passage that's incredible. The passage words things better than the student ever could have had. And they'll just take that whole section and put it in their paper. And even if it's properly cited, even if it's properly quoted, it still feels a bit odd, because it's like, wow, it's kind of an act of ventriloquism. Someone else is sort of speaking for the student, and that's not the goal here. As I said, think about 85% of the paper should probably be in your own words. And then, yeah, 15% is research, selective use of quotations, facts, statistics, whatever, to help support your points, not the other way around. Okay, next slide, which will appear in just a second. Any second. My machine is running really hot right now. Oh, this is like the worst presentation ever. Okay, let me skip this slide too, because we kind of already went over this. That the references page, there's so much to go into. I can't really model this. I sort of already did on that blank Microsoft Word document. Just remember to use all the different tools, the McGraw-Hill site, the APA Project Info site, that PowerPoint presentation, and you'll be fine with the references page. Rewatch those earlier parts of this session where I kind of showed you how to use the citation generator, how to fix it for errors, how to make sure there's either a DOI number or a permalink, how to properly cite information you find online. If you're doing all that, you'll be fine, and you have lots of sources to help you out as well. But that's why I have the big sorry sign up here, because there's not enough time in this session or this day or this week to go over every single instance of what you might encounter that goes on an APA references page. Okay, who's ready for quiz questions? I think that's what's next. And each one is going to take like 10 minutes to load. Okay, here comes quiz question number 1. Any second now. Oh, let me try something else. Let me see if I can close this and maybe reopen it. Or actually, maybe if I keep it minimized, we'll be fine. Oh, real quickly, essay organization. Okay, there's no one single way to write an essay. again, read through the assignment sheet for the essay that's due this Sunday. Some important things to keep in mind. In addition to there should be at least one source that comes from the Full Sail databases, and then additional sources can also come from the database or from credible sources online. It's 2 to 4 pages. That's 2 to 4 pages without the cover page and the references page. Okay, so the actual meat, the actual essay itself, should be between 2 and 4 pages. There's no single way to write an essay, but here's a sort of basic principle that I think is a pretty good one to follow. And if you look at the sample student essay that's been uploaded as an asset for you, you'll find that it's mostly following those principles. The good news is we've already done this first step, right? Writing an introduction. That we begin with some sort of hook or opening move. We briefly define the issue, and we deliver our thesis, which for this assignment is the stance that you're taking and what you want a specific audience to do, right? The thesis basically captures your call to action. And then when it comes to the body of the paper, really you're just going to further define the issue using separate paragraphs to make separate points. So let's say I have 3 separate things I want to cover regarding women and video games. For example, I want to make the point that women make up a larger percentage of gamers than people believe. Okay, that's a rich enough topic to devote a single paragraph to that. Maybe I want to devote another paragraph to recent examples of games that have been more responsible. I could devote an entire paragraph to that. So you'll probably have 2 or 3 body paragraphs in which you make the separate points you want to make in terms of defining the issue, establishing the issue, showing the reader that there's this issue, this problem, this concern that needs to be addressed. And if that sounds a little bit vague, I apologize, but there's really no simpler way to put it. The thing I want to stress here is the importance of organization, that we're not jumping from topic to topic within a single paragraph, that we're not just sort of speaking out loud on the page, that we sort of have a plan. One topic or one idea or one point per paragraph that we develop as fully as we can. And that's where you can use a short quotation, a short statistic or fact to help support what you're saying within those individual paragraphs. Make sure that you do discuss your call to action before you get to the end of the paper. Some students are awesome at defining the problem and raising awareness and talking about the issue with great clarity, but they sort of forget to address what it is they're actually asking a reader to do. So in my case, if you think back to my topic where I'm asking gamers to write to game publishers and to write to editors of gaming magazines and make their voices be heard, I would make sure that I spend at least a short or medium paragraph talking about that before the essay comes to a close. Pasha asks, what is a good text size for the essay? Yeah, that's one of the things that's listed on the assignment sheet. Basically, if you use 12 point, like Times New Roman, that's standard, so 12 point font. If you want to use another acceptable common font like Cambria, or I can't remember the other fonts off the top of my head, but you know, a pretty standard font, that's fine too. But 12-point font, just nothing goofy like those comics type fonts, or no 18 size font. I know all those tricks, by the way. Again, I was young once. Okay, quiz questions. I hope people can see this. I don't want to risk making the PowerPoint presentation full screen because it might slow things down. Again, here's quiz question number 1. You have to think way back to the beginning of the session. Engaging in research is like participating in a what? I spent a little bit of time at the very beginning comparing research to something. Okay, research is like joining or participating in a... Okay, hopefully people have jotted it down. I'm going to go on to question 2. Dropping in a quotation out of nowhere is similar to what social media or Instagram annoyance? Okay, that should be an easy one. That when I'm reading along and a piece of research just comes out of the blue, it's similar to what social media annoyance? Questions 3 and 4 aren't really questions. They're sort of things that you just have to do and show me. So here's what you need to do for quiz question number 3. You need to go to the Full Sail Library database. You have to find an article that's on your topic, by the way. Okay, because it doesn't happen often, but every so often someone will just find any article on, I don't know, politics or something and cite that. No, an article that's related to your topic. Give me the title, the author, and the name of the publication, and briefly summarize it. Alike, no. I mean, it's nice if you can write in complete sentences, but mostly I just check to make sure the answer is right. Yeah, so quiz question number 3. Find an article through the database, give me the title, author, and the name of the publication, and briefly summarize it. You don't have to write like pages or paragraphs. I mean, a couple, I don't know, 3 or 4 sentences that just gives me the gist of what the article is about. Okay, so I want you to prove to me you know how to use the database and that you can find something. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. It might take you time. Like my topic is so easy, representations of women in video games, that I can come up with results pretty fast. The streaming music royalty rates one, that also has a gazillion articles you can find. Some of yours might be more challenging, so you might need to spend the 30 minutes, the 40 minutes, the hour trying out different keywords. Another trick is to sort of look for the things you know that you might want to make, the points you want to make. Like, for example, I use the example of, I know I want to make the point that women make up a larger percentage of video gamers than people think. So maybe I would go to the database looking for things just on that. So there are ways that you can vary your keywords, that you can look for specific things rather than general things, and find useful results. But some of you, depending on your topic, might have a more challenging time than others. So it might not just happen in the first 5 minutes. Jacob says, will the answers to the first 2 questions be in the required reading online? No, I think I'm too original with my, well, I can't give the answer, but yeah, with my social media comparison and my research is like joining I don't think that's covered in the McGraw-Hill readings. And here's quiz question number 4. Once you find that article in the databases, okay, give me that end of the paper reference for the article. Okay, I want you to show me that you can follow APA rules for creating a references page entry. Don't get confused. Sometimes people give me an in-text citation. Sometimes people find an article and then they scroll down to that article's references page and just copy and paste those references page. No, no, no. I want you to create the reference for the article that you found, just like I was doing in real time on that Microsoft Word document, right? At the very end of the document, I created a references page and I showed you how to sort of carry over information or just do it on your own to create an entry for the references page. That's what you're doing with the article that you found. So show me you can do what I kind of showed in real time. Questions? I know we covered a lot, and I do apologize. I guess I had too many things open or too many things running, so I apologize for my voice cutting in and out, the slowness of some of these software programs to respond. But we did cover a lot of information today, especially with APA. And I know it's not the most thrilling stuff, but I think it's in some ways the most useful session, because if you follow the steps and you've kind of paid attention, or if you want to rewatch it later, you'll really have about 95% of APA down. Michael's asking for question number 2. Quiz question number 2 is, dropping in a quotation out of nowhere is similar to what social media annoyance, such as Instagram? And number 4, and May is asking a similar thing. Yeah, Gerardo, question 4 builds on question 3. So question 3 is, you find an article through the Full Sail Library database. Give me the title, author, name of publication, and briefly summarize the article. And then for quiz question number 4, you need to take that same article and create a references page entry. So I think I just saved it to my desktop. So right? So you need to create something like this. So if you had found this article, this is what I would want to see as your answer for number 4. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but I'll hang out if people have specific questions to go over.